Hey everybody, we're back with another Going Deeper, diving in again to the book of Joshua, which we've been studying on our Sundays, and particularly focusing on this city of Ai, chapter 7 and chapter 8. The question I've been asking myself is, why did Israel obey in 8? Why did they, after the Battle of Jericho in chapter 7, choose not to obey the Lord? Why did they suffer the loss? Well, we've seen that. There was disobedience. They went their own way. They believed they could do things in their own strength. And 8, they obey, but why? Why do it God's way? And here's the thing that stands out to us. It's this picture, not that they're just trying to have success. No, it's an understanding that they have had a deep revelation of the character of God, which has led to reverence. Watch this. At the end of 7, and from verse 26, we see that because of Achan's sin, Israel were commanded to stone Achan. And watch this, verse 26. Over Achan, they heaped a large pile of rocks, which remain to this day. Then the Lord turned from his fierce anger. Therefore, that place has been called the Valley of Achor ever since. You see, what happens here in the Valley of Achor is that Israel get a revelation of the holiness of God. And while they had seen the power of God, they'd seen the provision of God, now they see the wrath of God. They see the holiness of God poured out against unrighteousness, poured out against selfishness. And it changes them because they've begun to see God rightly. They've begun to understand the fullness of his character. And when we see God rightly, it actually leads to relationship. And that relationship produces reverence. And when we revere God for who he is, what Solomon calls the fear of the Lord, which leads to wisdom, then obedience, a lifestyle of obedience, flows out of that relationship. Obedience without relationship is just religion. And religion will always frustrate and always disappoint. But relationship and reverence, seeing God for who he is, that will lead to a life of obedience. But it's not religion. It is that beautiful relationship as we long to serve him because of what he has first done for us. And this is the difference between 7 and 8. Israel have seen God more clearly. They've had revelation, which has led to reverence, and that reverence has produced obedience, and therefore they walk in the fullness of the promise of God. This is my prayer for us as a church, that we would not be a people caught up in religion, but we would be a people who have a revelation of who God is. That revelation would lead to a deep reverence, a deep love for him in response to what he has done for us, and that would produce a depth of relationship, which in turn leads to a life of following or a life of obedience. And in so doing, that we would then walk in the fullness of his promise for us. May you go seeing God rightly. May you see Jesus high and lifted up. May you see the sacrifice that he made for us on the cross. May you know that you are far from perfect and deserving of wrath, and yet God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in transgression and sin. And in so doing, everything else falls away. That this life of Christian discipleship is not a life of having to do to please. It is a response of reverence to the relationship that God has afforded us in Christ. Go in that promise, serving him, loving him, because you were first loved by him. God bless.